Hello, I'm Doug Smith, and welcome to another edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth Town Hall. Today is the 8th of June, 2012, and our guests today are Jim Seveney, Town Councilor, and John Klimm. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to start with Jim. Jim, I know you've been in the council for at least a couple terms. How long have you been on the Town Council, and how did you get started in all this stuff?
I was elected in 2004. I had spent 4 years on the school committee. I ran for that in 2000. And then they asked me to, Democratic Party asked me to run for town council in 2004. I was lucky enough to have the voters support me, and I've been on ever since.
Are you having fun yet?
Yes. In spite of some of the more frustrating aspects, yeah, it is fun. I feel like I'm helping. I grew up in this town. It's sort of a family connection too. My dad was a town councilor here. I didn't get much opportunity to interact with him as an adult because I was in the Navy, and then he passed away early. So I'm sort of following his footsteps, you know, and it gives me a good feeling at least.
Well, that's great. I really appreciate your civic support. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who's thinking about throwing their hat in the ring for town council, or any other position for that matter?
Do it. The community needs everybody that they can get that's willing to take a look at things, bring a balanced perspective, and just try to help. I mean, it is hard to get people to make this kind of a commitment. So if somebody's thinking about it, think harder and do it.
Yeah, I guess it really is a commitment in terms of time and energy and everything else.
It can be, but you know, I'm working a full-time job. You know, I've got a family, I've got a house to run and all that, and hey, it's doable. It's doable.
Okay, great. Are you going to run again in November?
You bet.
Super. That's great.
I can say as a relative newcomer to town that Councilor Seveney has been, as much as anyone else, if not more than anyone else, been available night and day. And if he had a nickel for every stupid question that I've asked him over the last several months, he'd be a wealthy person now. But he does it with good humor, and I have benefited from his long history here in town and whatever, and it's been really extremely valuable to me in my first 2 or 3 months.
That's great. As a citizen, I'd like to echo those remarks, because same thing with me. And Jim, you're one of the few people that seems to answer their emails. And it's deeply appreciated. It really is, by other people that I've spoken to as well.
Thank you.
Let me talk about a couple of substantive issues, of which we've got numerous ones in Portsmouth.
Sure.
Let's start off with the East Bay Energy Consortium, which is kind of a hot topic right now. The legislation for that, in going through the process, has been significantly revised.
Right.
Mainly to address some of the concerns that people expressed about eminent domain and other things. What do you think of the new legislation, and do you support this kind of collaboration among the towns?
Well, the new legislation, I think, is making a fair attempt to address the largest issues, the biggest concerns that came out through the public dialogue on all this. And fundamentally, any innovative idea to bring more revenue into a municipality needs to be looked at seriously and pursued, much like our wind turbine. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. But I support the concept. I certainly support green energy. I know what my oil bills looked like last winter. So anything that can help in that regard, anything that brings a revenue stream, a new revenue stream into the town, we need this. As John has found out very quickly, and in some cases very harshly, the town is running a pretty lean municipal process, and there's not a whole lot of opportunity to make the kind of cuts that will really move the needle in a way the taxpayer can see, because his tax bill goes down. Okay, so we do the best we can to make sure there's no fat, but then you got to get past that, and you got to start thinking about other things like EBEC, you know, like our own wind turbine. Anything that presents an opportunity to bring more money into the town, I think needs to be seriously looked at, and this is one of those things. And I would not just reject this because somebody thinks green energy isn't really economical or any of that. It needs to be looked at, and no stone should be left unturned in finding a revenue opportunity. Because throughout all of this, I mean, issues come and go, but the one issue that has remained, certainly throughout my entire tenure on the council, is people's concerns over their tax bill, okay? And I've said this every time I've run for office, and I will say it again. The only way you're really going to move that needle in a positive way for a homeowner is to change the ratio in the tax base. You got to bring in more commercial, more of the mixed resort residential, okay, to try and ease the load on those 7,000 homeowners who are paying a property tax. And if some of these alternative revenue streams can help us move in that direction, it needs to be looked at. And I'm going to be for it before I decide to go against it. If there's some compelling reason, that becomes different. But this stuff needs to be looked at. And the people who are coming up with these ideas, you know, you can't beat the hell out of them. You know, because if people stop coming up with these ideas and these alternatives and at least a recommendation, well, where are we then? So, yeah, I'm for it. I'm for it until there's something really compelling that says it won't work.
Something factual that actually...
Something, yeah, factual.
There's another aspect.
That's always great.
Yeah, I don't get a vote on this. This is a public policy issue that the council votes on. But I did weigh in because I was struck by the fact that unlike much of what we hear in terms of the value of regionalization and working in partnership with other communities or whatever, all too often our challenge is just to get departments to collaborate and consolidate functions. But here you have 8 or 9 communities that have stepped forward and at least considered the possibility of working together. And I think it could be a model for other services. Councilor Seveney is absolutely right. You know, we have to change the dynamic. We're not going to be, the money isn't there to continue our operations the way it is. And I think that if nothing else, this EBEC proposal put an interesting perspective on the possibility of collaborating and partnering with quite a few other communities.
Well, you know, a lot of the critics of EBEC also, for some reason, have a negative opinion about the wind turbine in Portsmouth. What are your thoughts, Jim, on that?
Well, my thoughts are I supported it at the outset, and I'd like to start that whole conversation with thanks to the Portsmouth Economic Development Committee, because they did all the analysis and the legwork, all the due diligence. And the facts are that things started turning in March of 2009, which is roughly not quite 1,200 days. Okay, it's availability, it's material availability, its availability to turn if the wind is there is up around 94%. Okay, so the concerns that have been raised related to, well, it's not turning, they can't find the part, you know, they've got to go back to Germany to get some expertise or whatever the case may be. Yeah, that's all true, and we've lost maybe 70 days out of those 1,200 to, you know, the turbine being down for its material condition. It's broken. Okay. That said, that machine has produced almost 10 million kilowatt hours of energy. Okay. The gross revenue that is generated for the town is 1.3 million. Okay. The net, the part, you know, after the mortgage on it is paid and all that, the net that's come to the town is almost 400,000. I defy anybody, okay, to come up with a replacement revenue stream for that, because they think the wind turbine is not the right thing to be doing, or it was a bad deal and it doesn't work. It's all nonsense. And it's all based in opinion, and I don't know where it comes from, but the fact of the matter is it's a moneymaker for the town, and it's helped the taxpayers.
Well, one of the things that seems to come up all the time are some people, including some of your fellow councilors, saying, well, you know, the problems we had with the wind turbine.
Yeah.
And the problem is we really haven't had, you know, every machine has parts problems.
Sure.
Mechanical problems. But there really haven't been that many problems with the wind turbine, and nobody is ever specific on what it is they'd like to do with this thing. John, do you have any, I know you're relatively new in town, but
I actually have been surprised at the reaction most recently when the turbine was down for a bit because of a need to replace a part. That the reaction was so dramatic, because as the councilor says, if you look overall at the facts, the number of days that the windmill is down, either because there isn't enough wind, or because it's undergoing routine maintenance, or there's a part that needs to be replaced, or whatever the case may be, is relatively minor. And certainly within industry standards. And so I suspect that it got tied up in the debate over the whole regional EBEC issue. It got kind of pulled into that whole debate. But I agree with the councilor. The facts are the facts, and we need to get those out there and keep repeating them. Are there some issues, such as the business plan needing some tweaking in terms of putting more money aside for ongoing capital needs? The answer is yes, but that's certainly not unusual, and it certainly does not pose a problem at this point. And so, like other issues, I think that when we look at an issue like this, the facts are really important.
Yeah, I mean, we need to do a better job of making the information available, and we're using the website, and this information will be posted on the website and updated regularly, I hope.
Yeah.
And so people can look there. But, I mean, there's no budget. There's no money to have a more robust communications apparatus that gets the word out on all of the issues, so that people can go to an informed source and get that. So, you know, in the absence of that, you get people who make up stuff. You know, there was an article in an editorial in the Daily News yesterday. You know,
I saw it. Yeah.
You know, well, guess what? It's wrong. It's misinformed. And it's nonsense. You know,
Yeah.
I challenge anybody to come up with a replacement revenue stream for that thing.
Well,
Just come on up to the town hall and tell us all about it.
the need for public communications both ways, I think, that's one of the big things that
Yeah.
we're trying to help here with this program. Let me go on to another issue. As I say, we've got several of them. The Elmhurst Planning Committee reported out to the council a few weeks ago and recommended that the town consider accepting the Aquidneck Land Trust proposal for up to $1 million to help with the demolition of the Elmhurst School in return for putting most of the Glen property under a conservation easement. Now, I know the Gardner-Seveney complex is close to your heart. It was named after your father, so I expect you have a personal kind of take on this. What is your view on the proposal, and are you in favor of getting your proposal or this proposal on the town November ballot? Let the public decide.
Yeah. Well, I will repeat what everybody always says, and I agree with completely. The whole Glen complex is a jewel. You know, it's one of the centerpieces of the town, and we want to protect it and preserve it. My father started Little League Baseball back in the 50s. That's, I think, how all that ended up, and I'm very grateful to the town for recognizing him and honoring him like that. That's terrific. I would like to commend the committee for what they did, and I think the outcomes, we can't lose sight of the fact that they were charged with coming up with their best recommendation with what to do with the Elmhurst property, and they did that, and I think they came up with the right recommendation, and I certainly support getting rid of the building. I would like to keep the chapel part, but getting rid of the old school building and turning that into a park and a place where people can come and enjoy the shoreline and just that nice area down there. I mean, we can't lose sight of the fact that it is right in the middle of a residential neighborhood. So I agree that that's the long-term approach on what becomes of the property. And I am one of the guys, and one of the first discussions I had with John when he got hired was, how do we help the town by developing more revenue-generating activities throughout the Glen complex, and we're working on that. That said, the conservation easement was sort of a last-minute thing that got thrown on top of the fundamental charter of the committee, which was, what do we do with the property? Well, I think we've got a clear vision on that now, as I said. Whether or not we need a conservation easement, there's been no due diligence done to this point. We don't really know how much it's going to cost to remove the school building, and that has to be done. So that remains to be seen, whether the money comes from a conservation easement or whether it comes through our capital improvement plan, which John has just stood up again and breathed some new life into. The money's going to come from somewhere. That has to be done. That's a responsibility of the town, and I'm sure we'll find a way, one way or another, to carry through on that. The conservation easement itself, I don't know what to think yet. Numbers were thrown around in a meeting. That was the first that the council had been really briefed on, and there wasn't a whole lot to go on other than the Aquidneck Land Trust, which would love to cover that place with an easement, and has wished to do so for a long time, said, well, we'll give you $1 million for an easement. I don't know what that really means. I don't know that $1 million is the right number. Maybe it is. But I want to see the data. I want to see the results of a negotiation on what's in that easement. What can we still do? What can't we do? What part of the grounds does it really cover? Because the one thing we can't forget throughout all of this is these things go in perpetuity. And I think that means forever. And I haven't met anybody smart enough to tell me what the best interests of the town 300 years from now are going to be. And I also believe that the way the town charter is established, with some of the changes that have already been made to it and the ones that are coming, at least for review by the council, we already have a conservation easement of sorts. And
Absolutely.
it's called the people of Portsmouth.
Right.
And at the end of the day, nothing happens to that place unless everybody goes to the ballot box and tells us so by popular vote. And I like that. And I don't know that isn't sufficient. It has certainly been sufficient to date.
Well, I think one of the things that changed the dynamic quickly was the $1 million.
Well, you know, you dangle $1
$1
million out there and everyone just kind of gloms on it and goes, oh, that's great, you know. But the fact of the matter is, we're not even sure that would cover the demolition and site work costs to turn the old
Sure,
Elmhurst
but I
property.
think the council tasked John and
Yeah.
to take a look at this and
Yeah.
figure out a way to come up with an RFP and everything else to try to do that,
Right.
which I assume is ongoing, right?
It is, and that gets to my concern that I've raised to both the council and to you on this program several weeks ago, and that is that the process leaves something to be desired. You know, there's good people on all sides of these issues, on this issue, but the fact is the committee just made the recommendation to the council, and the council is being asked to make a monumental decision in a very short period of time. The problem is they haven't been given the courtesy of all of the information. We haven't done the due diligence, and it's no one's fault. I've never heard anyone that didn't want to protect the Glen. Most people that I talk to think that it's already protected. But the issue is that the council has a responsibility not only to do something quickly, but to do it right, probably more so the latter. And the question is there enough time for the council to do its due diligence? We have a process that hasn't even started yet to evaluate the outzones. We have a process that hasn't even started yet to negotiate the actual language of the conservation easement. Now, I've negotiated probably well over 20 conservation restrictions in my tenure in a former capacity, and not one of them was the same. Everyone is unique, and that's going to take time. And then the third thing is, as the councilor mentioned, is the whole issue of the RFP and trying to come to grips with what it's going to cost to remove the building and what it's going to look like after it's removed. There's huge drainage issues. There's asbestos and hazardous materials. There are utilities that need to be addressed. There's a lot of issues here, and so my message to all would be, let's do this right. And if we're ready in November, that's great. But if it has to go to a special or sometime thereafter, that, you know, people in 100 years aren't going to care whether we took 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months to do this. They're going to appreciate the fact that we did the right thing. And it's a little unfair, I think, for the council to be asked to make such an important decision, and even the citizens of this great community. If the council doesn't have the information, I have to assume the residents don't have the information yet either. And so that's really the complexity of all of this.
So I guess the question is, and really the question that I'd have would be, are you saying it's probably not likely that by 8 August we would have answers to enough of these answers, or could some kind of proposal be put on the ballot that's contingent on the November referendum ballot, that's contingent on something?
I'm saying that a whole bunch of things have to happen at once, and every one of them has to happen on time with no room for slippage for us to be able to. I think the council's got, what, maybe 3 meetings from now until 3 or 4 meetings between now and August. That's it. And we're dealing with we're halfway through the budget. We haven't finished the budget. We have 2 more budget meetings or whatever. And so I'm not being a fatalist here. I'm not saying it can be done, but I'm trying to be realistic when I suggest to the council and to you that everything would have to happen perfectly. We're dealing with a lot of vendors. There can't be any slippage there in terms of their presentation of their product or whatever. And so I'm just trying to say that this is through no fault of anyone's. This has landed on the lap of the council with very little time to do their due diligence.
Understood.
That's a concern.
Yeah, and that, I realize that's an issue. I guess I'd just like to see some way that the town people could express their opinions, at least in concept, but again, that's up to all you guys to try to figure out. Let me talk about something related to that, though. And you know, I've noticed we have these town committees. In fact, many councilors think we have too many town committees. These town committees are made up of people who are interested in whatever it is that the subject is of the committee. They request an appointment. They get it from the town council. They go out and they do a lot of work, and then they come back and they report out. And for example, one of the examples was the Charter Committee. Mm-hmm. When they come back in, then everybody's saying, well, geez, I really expected more from this or something. It doesn't seem like these citizens are getting, you know, the respect due to all the time and effort they put into this thing. Maybe I'm wrong, but I guess I just wondered, how seriously do you take their recommendations? Or do you, you know, I understand everybody's got their own perspective, but these people have looked at these problems for a long time, and this is the conclusion they came to. How important is that to you?
I think it's huge. Okay, we are a small town, we're a small council, and there's a very small supporting staff in the town hall. Okay, so all the work, all the analysis, development of recommendations and all, it cannot come just from the town staff and the town council, because they're just, the gene pool's not big enough.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of issues out there.
It's not. There has been some harsh attitude, I think, displayed on occasion when some of these committees come back to report out. That's unfortunate. I hope that's not how I come across. I value all of these committees. Without them, we wouldn't get the work done that needs to be done. You know, the Charter Review Commission is a really big deal. And that's especially important because we're dealing with the Home Rule Charter and making changes to it. And I don't want to be presented a change to the Home Rule Charter, you know, with, you know, 15 minutes of thought before the meeting started, okay, and have to make a decision in that meeting on something like that.
Sure.
I want the benefit of a robust dialogue by a good cross-section, okay, where there's been a democratic process to resolve the actual recommendation, excuse me, that's going to come to the council. So there's some confidence that there's a lot of thought that's gone into this stuff. We're going to have a workshop on the results of what the commission did, and I thought they did a great job, and I thought the recommendations were great. Anything that comes in, I mean, it is a democratic process, and everybody gets their say. But I want to focus on the things that I'm confident had a robust thought process underpinning them.
Sure.
And I'm willing to vote on those to go to the voters for their consideration and approval. The other stuff, you don't know what the pedigree is. Some of the stuff is being brought up sort of as minority reports because they were reviewed by the larger commission and rejected for whatever reason. We don't know what those reasons are necessarily. So there's a couple of problems with that. One, it diminishes the work that people have done in some cases. And secondly, it diminishes the council confidence and the voter confidence. Where did these changes come from, and how are they vetted before you've come to me and asked me to vote on this and make a change that, you know, lasts?
Now,
forever?
in our process, do these recommended changes, once the council rules on this, do they go on the referendum?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So they are voted on by the public.
Oh, absolutely. The council action is only which to allow or to reject going forward on a ballot in the November election for people to decide whether or not they want those changes.
Okay, this is one of those days where I'd like to have an hour show because I'm finding this fascinating. I'm going to jump ahead, and I'd like to ask this kind of question of both of you, really. In your opinion, do you think we are utilizing our 5 state legislators effectively to accomplish some of the things we need the state to do? Things like, you know, just easing state mandates, which people have talked about but are still difficult to do. Repairing the escape bridge, which is kind of a concern as we're in the hurricane season now.
Yeah.
And shore and beach repairs that are all responsibility of DEM, but they're out of money or something. Do you feel like we're getting enough out of our legislators?
I can't point the finger at any single legislator and say that that person is not getting it done. I mean, it is tough because they're a minority among the larger assembly up there, and the larger assembly obviously has other concerns. I mean, we lost a big battle over the school aid formula. Okay, our legislators fought to keep what Portsmouth gets intact, but that did not work out. You know, and as a result, there's about a $200,000 a year reduction in our state aid. That was a tough nut to swallow. But they fought for it. You know, it didn't work out. The tolls, as we've seen from recent events up in Providence, they fought the good fight, but the door is still open to toll-less Seconded Bridge. You know, and the larger assembly,
Sure.
you know, has a different perspective than what the Aquidneck Island contingent has.
Now, how are your relations between the town council and the legislators? Do you talk at all, or
Yeah.
get a chance to?
And they show up at meetings, you know, not all the time, but occasionally. And I think the community connection is staying pretty much intact.
Okay. John, what's your quick take on this?
As you probably know, I served in the Massachusetts legislature for 8 years, so I might have a kind of a unique perspective, but I've been incredibly impressed. Your question about whether we maximize this relationship is, I think the answer is no, but not for the reason you think. I think we have great legislators, but I think that we need to do more, we meaning me and town hall staff, to make it as clear as possible in terms of what our needs are. I've been incredibly impressed by every member of our legislative delegation and truly appreciative. They're in town hall a lot. They let us know what's going on or whatever. But there is a responsibility on our part as well. If we need grant funding for a certain thing, we need to reach out and whatever. So I'm hoping that over the next year we can improve on that relationship.
Well, we're just about out of time, unfortunately. I was going to ask you both about emergency preparation, my personal bugaboo.
We need it.
We need it.
We need a
absolutely.
reverse 911. It's dumb not to have it.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Jim, for being with us today. And thank you, John. And we hope to see you guys in the next episode of Portsmouth This Week. Thank you.